Right, good morning. It's Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. Doesn't really matter what day it is, we've got 24 hours, let's make the most of it. I was wondering what I was going to be sharing with you today, and fortunately through the powers of Facebook that we're on right now, a friend of mine, Jordan, had shared a post that I thought was really relevant to us, and it was an article about what kids have said to counsellors and the things that are going on through their minds, the things that they worry about. And I thought this would be really good to share with you. So I'm just going to read through what some of these are. And this is what a young child has said to a counsellor when they've needed help. Being alone in my room is okay. It doesn't mean that I am suicidal or sad. And that came from a 16-year-old. Being alone in my room is okay. It doesn't mean that I'm suicidal or sad. Can you remember when you were 16? Did you have times when you just wanted to be by yourself? Yeah, I certainly did. And you got all those hormones going through your body. You don't really know what's going on in the world. You don't know what your place is going to be in the world, and it's a shit scary place. So teenagers will quite often go and hide so that they can find out what the hell's going on with themselves. Next one. This one's from a 7-year-old. I feel like a bad kid when I make a mistake, usually because my parents think I did it on purpose. How sad's that? I feel like a bad kid when I make a mistake, usually because my parents think I did it on purpose. Now, can you see where comments like that or thoughts like that start to form the way that we're going to behave all the way through our life? So as a 7-year-old, they're thinking that their parents don't really care for them much. They think that they're doing these things, they're doing these mistakes on purpose. Wow. That's going to stay with that 7-year-old all the way through their life until they're actually lucky enough to find out that that's bullshit. A 9-year-old. My mum is too busy, she says, but she texts her friends all day. Why not tell me the truth? She's just avoiding me. That's a 9-year-old. So, modern world now, we're all on the phones all day long. People have got them glued to their hands. You go out to a restaurant, people are using the phones. Two people speaking to one another by text. It's crazy, isn't it? So we're not actually paying attention to the people that's really important around us. We get sucked in to what's being said on Facebook, what's being said on whatever platform it is that you're looking at. And we tend to forget that we need to give our attention to our loved ones. Because we love them, but they're there all the time. We take them for granted. But look at how this 9-year-old is thinking about this. She thinks that she's not as important as her mum's friends. A 10-year-old. Taking away all that I love doesn't motivate me. It leaves me feeling hopeless. So, that's obviously a child that's been punished in some way by having everything that they like to do being taken away from them. But rather than making them reflect on what they may have done wrong, what lessons to be learned from it, all it's making them feel is hopeless. Let's look at how we actually communicate with our kids, because we've got to find ways of speaking to them so that they can learn the lesson from themselves. And it's not about the fact that they've done something wrong, okay? It's about maybe they've misunderstood something. There's got to be a way that they can learn from this experience. Doesn't make them bad. The act that they did may be bad, but they as a person are not bad. And as parents, we're quite good at projecting that badness onto them. A 13-year-old, another teenager, the hormones are flying. Telling me that you are disappointed in me kills me. I didn't do what I did to hurt you. I was just learning. Yeah. Why is it that parents will take it on themselves? Oh, you're trying to punish me. You're trying to hurt me. And you're saying that to your kids. No, your kids are just going out and trying to learn and experience new things. They're not doing it to spite you. And that just goes to show that the parent in that situation has become the child, because the child's pointing the finger and saying, "Oh, you're doing that just to spite me." Crazy, crazy, isn't it? But that comes back to how they were brought up as kids. It's a cycle that just keeps on repeating, repeating, repeating. When I annoy my mum, it is because I want her attention. I don't get it any other way. And that's what kids do. Okay? All that a child wants is the attention of their parents. They want to feel that they're important. So they'll try and do good things, and if good things don't get them the results that they want, they're going to start being a little bit naughty, because when they're naughty they get attention. So why are they being naughty? So they can get your attention. How are you going to stop them being naughty? Give them your attention. Easy, innit? My parents are always busy on their phone. Here's this one again. Why am I here? Makes me want to leave. That's a 9-year-old. Feeling that they're not as important to their mum and dad as that thing. Another one. I wish I was as important as their phone. A 6-year-old. A 6-year-old's already making this connection that they're not as important as something that wasn't even in our lives 30 years ago. I love my mum and dad, even when they yell at me. I always love them. I wish I knew that they loved me as much. From a 10-year-old. When was the last time that you told your kids that you loved them? Or even more importantly, show them that you loved them. My dad never told me that he loved me, that I can recall. I'm sure that he must have done at some point, but I cannot recall my dad ever saying that he loved me. And the very last time I saw my dad alive, in the hospital, and I told him that I loved him, and he took a big deep breath and he swallowed, and he was struggling because he got loads of tubes going everywhere, and he said, "I reciprocate." So even at that stage he knew where he was, but he couldn't say those words, "I love you," and that's because of his upbringing, and that upbringing has been passed on to me, and I find it difficult to say "I love you" because of the way that I was brought up. It didn't need to be said in our house, but in other people's houses it does need to be said. So tell your kids that you love them. You don't know how they're thinking. They're not always going to tell you. My parents are better off just divorcing. They stay together for my siblings and I. That's come from an 8-year-old. My parents are better off just divorcing. They stay together for my siblings and I. How many families across the country stay together and they say it's just for the sake of the kids? I've got personal experience of this. My first marriage broke down when my children were very, very young, and I made the conscious decision that I had to end that relationship because I didn't want my kids growing up in an environment where there was anger and where there was arguing going on all the time. I didn't think it was healthy, and as a result of that, I've gone through some really difficult times because of that decision that I made, but I did it out of giving for my kids, for the best thing for them, rather than what was the best thing for me. And I don't regret that decision one little bit. Okay. I cry myself to, this is the hardest one. I cry myself to sleep at night. I feel alone. The only company I have are my tears. Mum and dad fight a lot at night. How many families do mum and dad wait until the kids have gone to bed before they recommence their battles, thinking that the kids have gone to sleep and they can't hear what's going on? They can hear what's going on. They can sense what's going on. They can smell it. They've got a second sense when there's not harmony in the house. And mum and dad just keep on battling because they've got to be right. The egos get involved and they're having a go at each other. I want to be right. I've got to be heard. Crazy, crazy. The ones that is really important to us, the kids, they're picking up on all of this, and we're creating a really bad example to our kids. And guess what? What they see you doing, what they experience with what you're doing, rather than what you're saying, is the way that they're going to grow up. So if you want your kids to grow up in a really good way, then set the example for them. And this isn't me preaching to you. It feels a little bit like I am preaching, but you know, we've got to do a lot for our kids. We've got to set the examples. And the last one I'm going to share with you, a 15-year-old. Oh, I can remember when I was 15. When I say no, it doesn't mean that I'm trying to be disrespectful. I just don't agree with you, and that's from a 15-year-old. Now, when kids are growing up, they'll generally be quite compliant, but then at some stage they start becoming defiant, and that's what's happening there. I'm saying no, because a 15-year-old starting to form their own minds. They don't have to agree with everything that mum and dad say. They can start thinking for themselves, and that's what they're doing, and they're just exercising that right, and they don't have to agree with you. In fact, they shouldn't agree with us. They should form their own minds, get as much information as they can, go and seek it and find out what is their truth. Because guess what? The things that we're saying may be a load of absolute rubbish, in exactly the same way that maybe what our parents told us was a load of rubbish to us. Anyway, I just thought it was really important to share that Jordan had shared on his page this morning, because we've got to think about these things, about what we're doing within our families, and it also applies to what we're doing in work. So let's just start thinking a little bit, and thanks for watching. We'll speak to you all again soon. Ta-ra.